Can plant-based nutrition be good for your brain? That's a topic of the recently published paper in Clinical Nutrition, where a plant-based diet has been compared to a conventional meat-containing diet. The research team has looked at the perfusion of thalamus in the brain in healthy men, in overweight men, and in men with type 2 diabetes. We know that after we eat a meal, the reward circuits in our brain that are responsible for the pleasure that we're experiencing light up. The warmer the colors, the more blood flow. Green is suggesting better perfusion than blue, but red is the highest perfusion. So when we eat a meal, our reward circuits light up. This response is also dependent on the composition of the meal, but it's also dependent on our health. So normally, both sides of the brain, both reward circuits are lit up in the brain after a meal. However, in addictions, like for example, cocaine addiction, the response is blunted. And similarly, the response is also blunted in obese individuals, suggesting that people who struggle from excess body weight use food in order to override this blunted response. It has also been shown that different meal composition affects the brain and reward circuits differently. So a research team compared a high versus low glycemic index foods, and they found out that the high glycemic index, which means normally with lower fiber content, more processed foods, was associated with a greater decline in the brain perfusion of the reward circuits, and this was also associated with increased hunger. So the current study has looked at the reward circuits, particularly at the thalamus. The reward circuits are responsible for our motivation and reward, but are also tied to our cognitive function, our mood, and our memory. So the research team took 20 healthy men, 20 overweight or obese, and 20 men with type 2 diabetes. And these men were consuming two different meals, a vegan meal and a meat-containing conventional meal with the same amount of energy and the same macronutrient content. Now, the perfusion of the thalamus completely differed between the groups and between the meals. So in healthy individuals, there was a steep decline in thalamus perfusion after the vegan meal. While in the overweight and in the diabetic men, the decline was more pronounced after the meat sandwich. So comparing these three groups, a healthy response would be a greater decrease in thalamus perfusion after a vegan meal. But this response was compromised in people who were overweight or men with type 2 diabetes. Now, interestingly, satiety increased after the vegan meal in all three groups, in people with diabetes, in overweight, and in healthy men. Also, the secretion of GLP-1, which is one of the incretins secreted in our gut in response to meal intake, increased significantly, particularly in people with diabetes, where this secretion is already compromised, and in healthy men. So to summarize the findings, responsiveness of the reward circuitry in the brain is reduced in obesity and type 2 diabetes. And the vegan meal reduced the activation of the reward circuitry in healthy men. It was also associated with greater satiety in all groups after the vegan meal. And the vegan meal also elicited increased GLP-1 secretion um, in men with type 2 diabetes and in healthy men. So these findings suggest that a plant-based diet actually addresses the underlying causes of obesity and diabetes. We've known for some time that a plant-based nutrition is beneficial for diabetes and for weight management. And this study just contributes to clarifying the mechanisms that are behind. And according to this study, a plant-based diet is actually good for your brain as well.